And welcome to the Azam Shop channel on YouTube. I'm your host Mohammed Azam, presenting you another screencast, and this screencast is about Cocos2d development and actually creating a physics enabled game like Angry Birds using Level Helper and Sprite Helper. Okay, so I'm going to start with creating a Cocos2d Box 2D, which is a framework, physics framework application, and you can go ahead and create it by using simple Cocos2d template. Now I'm going to use Cobalt2d because I need to get the latest version of the Box 2D, but if you are using the latest version of Cocos2d, you already have the latest version of Box 2D and you can simply use that. So once again, it is completely fine that if you use a Cocos2d template and not Cobalt2d, which I'm using to create your project. It is completely fine. I'm just going to call it Angry Birds namespace, and the project will be called Angry Birds. And then I'm just going to say create the project. And I believe that it will open the project. Let me cancel this one. This is a completely different project, got loaded. And let me go ahead and close this one also. And let me actually try to reopen it. There's some problem with Cobalt2d when it tries to open two different projects. I would say it's kind of like a bug or something related to that. So let me open this Angry Birds namespace again in Xcode and see that if it loads correctly, and now it seems to be loading correctly. So a couple of files are already there if you're using Cobalt2d, and I'm pretty sure if you are also using Box2d, I mean the Cocos2d Box2d template, then you will also get a couple of files already added in your project, and which will allow you to run the project and see what is going on. Now Cobalt2d is a little bit heavy project. As you can see, there are so many libraries actually added, and the first time it has to rebuild, it takes so much time to rebuild these things. But it's also a good project because it will get the latest Box2d the library, and most of these things like sneaky input for joystick, Cocos3d, Chipmunk, and all these libraries are already added. So if somehow or somewhere during the process you want to use it, okay. Meanwhile it is doing that, what we can do is go ahead and open the Level Helper and create our level. Okay, Level Helper I think can be downloaded. It is available on the Apple App Store for your Mac, and you can download it and you can use it. There is a price associated with that, of course. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to create a completely new project. I'm just going to say new project over here, and it's going to ask me oops, I think it says open or something. Let me say new project. Project name, I'm just going to say Angry Birds Level Helper project, or whatever that you want to call it. It's a universal application. I'm just going to say iPhone application, which will run in the landscape mode, and then the path to the project, so we can actually go to the directory where that project is and use that. So I'm just going to go to this directory, and we just created this Angry Birds folder, and I'm just going to say okay, this is my project. Okay, and we'll going to go ahead and create the project, and this everything looks fine. So the project is created, and this is an iPhone project. So you can see this red area that pretty much defines your limitation, your boundaries related to your iPhone project. So right now our project doesn't really do anything because it doesn't have the sprites to work with. And sprites are handled by the Sprite Helper, which you will need, if you are if you're using a physics application with Level Helper. So we're just going to find the Sprite Helper over here and launch that. So this is the Sprite Helper, okay, and what we can do is we can load our sprites from, so these will be the sprites, or these will be the images or sprites actually that will be used in your application. So we are just going to import the sprites, and if you go on desktop, I have a folder called Sprites. So I'm just going to open that folder and basically select all of these sprites which are part of the game, and you can see that all these sprites are now loaded. Okay, this is the background, this is kind of like some dust or poof, and this is the angry bird, this is the angry pig, and then you have some different images associated with that. I'm just going to say auto layout so that I'm pretty sure that it is already done. Okay, so auto layout actually just it's putting everything in a standard way. Wow, seems like it's here we go. So now at this point we can actually save the sprites, and wherever you want to save is up to you. We are going to go to the Angry Birds folder, and we are going to try to save it in the resources folder. So here we go, resources, and we don't really need that one, but I'm just going to save it over here. Okay, and actually let me save it again because I've always forgot to change the name. So you don't want to really save it with this name. I'm just going to say Angry Birds, something descriptive is much better, right? Sprite Helper files. Okay, Sprite Helper, and just save that. All right. Let me go ahead to our folder, and let me say documents, and just to show you that what files are actually generated over there. So if you go in resources, you will see all these HD, iPad. So Sprite Helper generates all these images for you, and this is a Sprite Helper file which you can use actually, and we don't really need these things, so we can delete that. Okay, so we will only need these couple of things. All right, so now back to the level helper, and basically apparently, I mean, it will eventually load all the files associated with it. I think I have to click over here to get it loaded, which is kind of a little small glitch in the software. But we got these files, we got these sprites actually now loaded. Okay, and if we want to use it, all we need to do is simply drag and drop these sprites, and then use it on our in our level. And the great thing about the level helper is that you can actually test the sprites just by over here, just by going over here, right? And I'm just going to save the project again, and I can use a screen tester, which is actually built in to test the level. Okay, and the level looks like this. Now the great thing is that if I want to test the level with a bird, let me actually carry the bird. I just save the level, and you can see the bird. So you're developing the level at a very high speed, and the good thing is that one thing we can actually test it over here. You can test the whole level over here. So I'm going to assign some sort of a physics properties to this bird. Usually the physics property that it says over here, handled by the Sprite Helper, you can uncheck that box and you can go and say that the bird is dynamic. Now if I run it again, you will see that the bird is falling down, and it actually falls down the screen. Okay, so for one thing we need to do is we need to create some sort of a physics boundaries. And now here is the link for physics boundaries. We will create this physics boundaries. So 480 is the width, and height maybe 305, maybe not, maybe 290. So you can actually check with different heights. This is way too much. What we want is maybe 275 5 or something like that. Okay, gravity and everything is okay. So now if you run this, you will see that the bird is not actually going off the screen at this point. The bird is actually, you know, right over here because of the physical boundaries. So at this point we have created our level helper file. Let's go ahead and save our level. So save level as, and it's always a good idea if we go into the resources folder and save the level over there. So I'm just going to say level 1 and save. So this level is actually now saved into the level helper folder. We also need to create or generate the code. Okay, and you can generate the code over here, you can generate the code anywhere. We're just going to create the code in our desktop folder, which is level helper, and that's it. So the code is also generated at this point. Now all is left to do is to import all of that what we have done into our project. All right, and I believe if I build the project now, you can see it's well, it's still a little bit slow, but if you are using Cocos2d Box2d templates, it will be much more faster. I'm using Cobalt2d, so it has to compile and build all these things. Okay, but it doesn't have to build it again and again. It just builds it maybe one time, and then if you don't you know, if you don't change those things, those are never built. But this time I think we are compiling it for the first time, I guess, or the second time, so it's building it again and again. Anyway, so resources folder over here, you can see we don't really need that, so we deleted that. And basically add files. We can add all these files that we generated into our resources folder. Okay, so the files from this one, all of these files can be easily added into the resources folder. That's weird. Not sure why it's not adding that file. It's saying that's kind of weird because that's never happened before. But let me go ahead and go to that folder. Not sure why it's giving that problem. So I'm just going to go to Cobalt2d over here and over here in Angry Birds folder, project files, resources, and these are all the resources that we have. Not sure why or how we got these resources, but we don't really need that. We do need these resources. Let me see if I can just copy it over here. Okay, and these also. And then the level 1, which is the actual level that we saved. Okay, so now we have these files added. Okay, the last thing that we need to do is to add the folder or to add the code that is generated. Okay, and the code that's generated over here in our basically the folder on the desktop. So that is pretty easy to add. We're just going to drag and drop, and we're going to drag it over here and add it. And let's go ahead and compile and see what's going on. And if everything is valid. So everything is valid at this point. Okay, so What we are going to do is we're not going to use this particular file over here. We are just going to add our new file. And I know you might be thinking that this is a very long procedure, but all I have done is created a Sprite Helper file, which also creates images. I created a level file, and I created or generated the code, which will be used by our application. Okay, so it's nothing really complicated going on. It seems like that it is a lot of work, but it doesn't really is a lot of work, and you can do it much more better than what I am doing, because I have to keep switching on different folders. So here we go. So game layer NS object. Okay, and we are going to create a new layer or a new file called game layer, which will actually start our project. All right. A couple of things. First of all, this will inherit from CC layer. Another thing, the extension, if you're using Cocos2d, should be MM and not M. You need to also reference to some of the Cocos2d, and you also need to refer to Cocos2d, and you also need to refer to the level helper. Okay, and at this time, I mean, you are a little bit ready to create the world, or so you can simply say world this and level helper loader. You can say loader. Okay, now for implementation file, let me copy some code, actually a lot of code. Okay, so what is going on? Couple of methods are actually required, and which will be part of your Cocos2d template step. This is required, and the other method is tick, so which will enable basically the gravitational forces in your application. So the only method that I had to write is this small method called initialize world, which will initialize the gravity, okay, and which will initialize the level helper loader. It will add the objects to the world, and this we don't really need this right as of right now because we're not really doing any collision detection, but you need to schedule and call this particular tick method which enables the gravity. Now let me go ahead and run this example, and you will see that the same thing that we saw when we were running from the level helper, you should be able to see the same thing. Not sure why it's running on the iPad simulator. Okay, let me stop this and go to the iPhone simulator. Another thing you need to do, which I forgot to do, is go to the config.lua file and say that your start file or scene is actually game layer. So let's go ahead and run it again, and hopefully now it will start in our iPhone simulator instead of the iPad simulator. And here it is, and it actually dropped like a rock. Okay, so if you want to change the gravity, because right now the gravity is actually, you can see, is minus 95. Here it is. I'm not sure what I had to put it over here, but let's say 0.5. So you have to adjust the gravity. It might be minus 5. It might not be minus 9.5. So minus 0.5. I think right now it might be way too slow for the bird, as you can see. Okay, so but you can change the gravity. I mean, whenever or whatever number that you want. Okay, and minus of course means that the gravity is actually going downwards. If you say positive, then everything kind of reverses, and it will not look pretty. Basically, it will be a weird effect. So here we go. I mean, we can see that it's working correctly. And all the physics is actually taken care of, which we'll see in our next tutorial. I know, don't think of this tutorial as level helper is complicated. It will just get, it will just need some time for you to get used to it. All I did is generate some Sprite Helper files, which also generate the images, and all these images, as you can see, they are just grouped together. Okay, and then we generated the code from the level helper. We also just save the level as level number 1, which basically saves everything related to the level where everything is. Okay, and that's pretty much it. I hope you like this video, and stay tuned for more of Angry Birds tutorial.